Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Oh dear. Hold on, I forgot to turn the camera on. Let's fix that. There we go. All right, guys. It is Wednesday. Everything in the media is about hurricanes right now, man. Happy hurricane. Happy Hurricane Day, Uzi says. Good grief, man. I thought that it was supposed to, like, come ashore last night, but apparently it's not until tonight. Shows you know what? I tell you what, I have never seen the public as keyed into, I personally have never been as keyed into watching a hurricane as closely as this one. And I think it just really shows that I really do not know a whole lot about hurricanes. I mean, we've been doing this for 7 years, so there's been a lot of hurricanes and even pretty major hurricanes during the time that we've been trading, but it's just never something that really stuck out to me. I don't know all of these things like when do the weather models update and all of these sorts of things, right? But apparently it's supposed to come out tonight. I got my rainy pants on. Wait. Okay. Let's go and look at what the market has for us today. So it kind of looks a lot like yesterday to me. Well, okay, so the treasuries, they kind of recovered that downside that we saw yesterday. So, you know, that bounce that we were looking at that we were like, oh, that kind of looks like trap traders and rebalancing, kind of turned into a larger meta order long. But we are looking at the same situation this morning where they kind of moved down and we're looking at maybe it'll be a tight session. Here you got the S&P 500. Well, at the higher end of the most recent range, but nothing too crazy. Oil's still seeing a lot of volatility. There's still a lot of stuff going on in the Middle East, even though the hurricane is like the dominant headline, right? Gold took a little bit of a dive yesterday, but not too bad. Kappa's hurting. So to reiterate, in China, you know, they expected to continue seeing China being like all hands on deck, let's save this economy sort of a thing, and they weren't. You know, it was like, okay, well, that's enough stimulus for now, and they lost a lot of it, and so copper has been reeling because of that. And we get the Japanese yen and the dollar here. The Japanese yen not doing too much since that big drop the night before. The dollar's still kind of pointed upwards though at 102.36. And then Bitcoin, big documentary last night about who Satoshi was that made the case that it was a certain person. They really played it out as like they knew who Satoshi was, but it was all just hype. It was all just hype, and Bitcoin is unaffected. So, let's see here. Just pray for my 2 oak trees. Everything else will be fine as long as those bastards hold. Let's see here. We lost power for 2 weeks way back when we got hit with a hurricane. It's really weird. You don't think anything is really happening, but then you see the aftermath and it's like, dang, oh no, I totally get that one. Because when we had it's not a tornado, but it's called a downdraft that kind of ends up being the same thing as a tornado. Basically, you get like a bunch of cold air that gets stuck over top of the other air, and all of a sudden it just kind of like breaks through the clouds and comes and just falls straight down and just like flattens an area. And that happened in my city, and enough that the state declared it a disaster area and everything. And all of the trees on that street got destroyed. Well, when it was happening, we did not think it was a huge deal. And then we saw the aftermath, and it was wild. And there was another one, like we had another pretty bad windstorm, I want to say 3 years ago now. And that one really destroyed the city. Like, oh my gosh, so many trees down and everything. It uprooted so many trees. Like, I went to the cemetery a little ways over, and like half of the trees in the cemetery had been uprooted. So yeah, and Uzi, because it sounds like even though you're pretty far inland, that it's gonna like hit you straight on, yeah. So be careful. Yeah, but where I live, hurricane impacts are generally limited to trees falling over, which still puckers up my ball. You know, this is something that I had heard before, but I didn't realize the extent of it. But like the real damage from the hurricane is the storm surge that comes through. That's why like they evacuate areas. And it's like the coasts, but those places on the coasts, they're talking about like a 10 to 15 foot storm surge possible in some areas. That is wild. Like when you get to a 5 foot storm surge, that's basically like everything is underwater, cars are being taken away, etc., etc. So now the thing is, I was under the impression that by the time it hits landfall, that it won't be really a very big hurricane, and that the concern was mostly the storm surge. But it sounds to me now, or the latest that we've gotten now, is that it will be a Category 4 when it hits land. So probably by the time it hits Uzi, it's not going to be so bad, but it's still going to create crazy damage in that area, man. I got punched in Ian and the walls were moving in my bedroom. Ooh. There's somebody on TikTok, they were telling a story that they, for some reason, they had decided to stay in an area that was supposed to be evacuated. And they said that like the walls of the house were closing in, and that it was basically like they were hiding in a closet with their dad, like holding a mattress over them for like 4 hours or something. Like, it was crazy. It was like, and that was the other thing. So when I got on TikTok last night, oh geez. Well, so we had a hockey game last night. The inaugural hockey game for the new Utah, they don't have a name yet, the Utah Hockey Club. Such a good game. So I spent my evening watching that. I watched like the first half of the Satoshi documentary, and then I watched the hockey game. And then I got on TikTok. And when I got on TikTok, like the first videos that it was showing me was like all of the people on TikTok that are planning on being stupid. Like there was this guy that has like a houseboat that they were saying he was planning. Now I don't think he was like in the part that's going to get hardest hit, but he was like planning on staying in his houseboat. They were calling him Lieutenant Dan. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Is that maybe I misunderstood? He's not planning on staying because like, and there was another guy that was like, he was in an unfinished house, or maybe it was just that the basement was unfinished, but it was being flooded, and he was just sitting in his canoe, kind of chilling. You know, like the storm surge was there, the flooding was there, but like the wind and storming and whatnot is not there. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? Yeah, not a houseboat. It's just a random. Yeah, not a houseboat. It's just a sailboat. But I mean, it looked to me like it was a boat that he lived in. People do that all the time on the coast. Uzi says the crazy thing is that the wind forecasts aren't intense at all for us today and tomorrow. 25 to 40 mile an hour gusts, it says, which isn't bad at all comparatively. Octavius, we got 15 minutes notice for the Category 5 weatherman. No, nothing. It's not the safest thing in the world, but you can get lucky. Okay, well, it sounds dumb to me. So it sounds to me like anybody that plans on staying in the areas that have had evacuation notices issued, that you are dumb. You are really dumb for real. Like, I certainly wouldn't do it. Says it, yeah. So another thing that's going on though that I think is really kind of weird is there are people online going all in on the government controls the weather conspiracy theory. Like, look, there are things that for many decades now where, you know, there's like cloud seeding and that sort of a thing. So like we can influence the weather, but that's kind of like just a science experiment. Sometimes it kind of works. It has a little bit of an impact on rainfall and things like that. But this idea that like you can just fly an airplane and leave a contrail behind and it can completely change the trajectory of a hurricane or change its intensity just is so absolutely fantastic. I just can't believe that anybody would honestly believe that, and yet I'm seeing it full blown all over the place. Maybe these people don't really believe it and they're just farming engagement, but holy crap. It is really weird. It's really weird. So hotels are all filled here. No, Uzi says, I don't need to evacuate just because a big tree branch might punch a hole in my roof. It'll suck, but I don't need to run from it. Yeah, he's not in an evacuation zone. I don't think that any of my viewers are in an evacuation zone. If you are, you should be gone. There's another thing that I saw that really triggered me was there was all of these people saying that their jobs were telling them they have to stay until the last second. And it was like, you know, when it's time for you to go, you're not going to be able to get out. That's very dangerous. And I couldn't believe that employers were especially it was like retail workers and stuff. It's like, come on, is it worth it? Like the store's not even going to be there anymore, man. Why are you trying to keep your employees there? That's just so crazy stupid. But you know that there's always going to be somebody. There's always going to be somebody. Of course, it's the retail workers and stuff. Yeah. I can't believe. You know what? The thing that, again, I see it everywhere, and maybe it's just because, you know, I'm between jobs right now, and I'm a little upset about the way that went down and everything. We want to think that we're in a meritocracy, especially those of us that are Republicans. You know, merit is a significant thing. We think that people should be rewarded for our effort, and like we're totally trying. But like the honest truth is that all of these decisions are discretionary decisions made by individual people, and those individual people are not necessarily well equipped to be able to determine the performance of people, and there's a lot of things that are going to cloud their vision of that. Like if somebody's doing really well, they could see them as a threat and you know, not reward them appropriately because of that. And it might not even be a conscious thing that they're doing, you know? So like, seems to me that there are a lot of people in management that most people aren't good at management, and that most managers are bad managers. And yeah, so you're in a situation like this, I think you're probably always going to have somebody somewhere doing something really stupid, a policy preventing their employees from being able to get out and be safe. And I don't really know what you can do about it other than, you know, if you're in a position to do that, to learn how to be a really good manager. And, it's a skill that requires a lot of dedication and learning to do. Why don't they try to detonate a bomb? Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, you're referring to when Donald Trump was like, why don't we do this? You know what? I think he's just kind of throwing ideas out. He's unfiltered. We had to close for 2 days. I don't know about Wally World, but Publix closed at 6 last night, and they're staying closed for the day today. We also paid to fill all our employees' gas tanks. Really all we can do. Yeah. I mean, you're in a different situation. For sure. So yeah. And I'm sure that so one of the things is that now the expectations for this storm are pretty high, right? So like maybe if the storm isn't as bad as expected, the markets can actually rally after the hurricane, because normally hurricanes do cause selling. So that's going to be interesting. Enough about that though. We should write our notes here for the day. We do have a few things to consider or talk about. So, why did it already oh, no, because that's a Wednesday from like way back. I'm like, how come it already has Wednesday on? Wednesday from like 2 months ago. Okay, so we do have a 10-year auction today, right? Yeah, 10-year auction. We also have a number of Fed speakers. I'm just going to list them. Bostic, Logan, Oglesby, Barkin, Jefferson. Okay. And also... no, that's pretty much it. But then tomorrow is CPI, right? Yeah. So we kind of end up with a pretty light economic news week, with CPI tomorrow. That measure has been coming in line. Like if it misses, it's just going to be off by 0.1%, like normal times. But because it's like the only really big piece of news that we have this week, I think that you're likely to see relatively large flows off of the CPI, regardless of what happens tomorrow. And especially since we had this bout of hawkishness since the non-farms on Friday. If CPI comes in hotter than expected, I think you'll really see the market react very negatively to that. So that means for us today that some of the action is going to be a little bit constrained and really dominated by the 10-year auction, which may actually honestly be a buy. It tends to be like sell into the auction, buy after the auction, but overall, like for retail trading, like sometimes it's as simple as just buy it. And since we had this little bit of weakness coming into the open and everything, I think that we're going to see something similar to yesterday, where it kind of chops around, maybe makes a few new lows, and then, we see a little bit of a reversal and it mean reverts. Yeah, it's going to be bad for the coastal peeps. There's no escaping that. The storm surge in some of these areas is going to be insane. Yeah, like when it's like a 10-foot storm surge, that's like, think about how deep of a pool 10 feet is. Okay, you will not survive that. You will drown. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. I don't think that anybody's in that area, but geez. It's just wild to think about. So maybe you Floridians can explain this to me, because like, this is not the only hurricane that those areas have been hit by. And I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, okay, so like, Florida is getting big storm surges all the time. So how is there anybody that actually lives in those areas? Like, how are those areas not completely destroyed like every 5 years? Why, you know, I kind of seems like you wouldn't really want to build anything all that permanent close to the coast. And yet, there's certainly a lot of people that live there. How does that work? I don't get how that can be a thing. Like how are the coasts of Florida not in a situation similar to like Haiti or Puerto Rico, where it's just like they can really never get on their feet because the storms always come in and destroy everything. So that's kind of, and again, it comes back to this thing that is like, I don't know nearly as much about hurricanes as I should, because they are a pretty major factor for US markets, and it happens every year. And I guess it was just kind of something that I've always kind of like dismissed, because it's like not something I'm ever going to experience. So, you know, knowing everything about how, like, the information that we get and the response and how that cycle tends to go for the people that live there and everything, I know nothing about it. And I really should. Well, anyways. You can come over here to Zero Hedge. They don't have any updates, do they? Nope. Tampa is... You live in Tampa, right, is it? Now I'm like, I should open up a map. No, you live further in. You live in, like, more like Orlando or something. Or maybe Gainesville. Looking at a map. My understanding is Uzi lives somewhere in here. Tampa is on the coast. So Tampa is going to get destroyed, man. Tampa's a pretty big city. There's a lot of highways there. Tampa's probably a bigger city than Salt Lake. That's a really big city, though. Yeah. So like for instance with Miami, because that, like, isn't that kind of like more? Wouldn't Miami get more hurricanes than Tampa? Potentially, I guess there is kind of like some land down in here, but geez, you know, how is anything in Miami stand? How has that not been like completely flooded at some point? Don't understand. Explain this to me, folks. Okay, but not really any good updates or anything on Zero Hedge or any of that. U.S. antitrust officials consider Google breakup as trust-busting era may return. You know what? This one with Google, I find a little bit interesting, because, like, here's the thing. When it comes to AdSense, like, nobody can compete. Like, if you break Google up, all you're going to do is you're going to take segments that aren't profitable on their own and spin them off and cause significant degradation in those services. And whoever owns search, maybe the Google property is still advertising. Whoever owns advertising is going to make all of the money. So I'm kind of wonder if Google breakup kind of doesn't accomplish anything. When really the issue is that, you know, there's a couple of other companies that, you know, are really big in trying to play in that area and just can't compete. And splitting Google up is not going to make that market more competitive. It's just, it would kind of almost be just like when they broke up the phone companies, actually. Like they broke up the phone they broke up AT&T into all of these different sub companies, and then all of those different sub companies didn't really perform very well, and eventually they all just got bought back up by AT&T. Like, so breaking up the phone companies, I don't know if that actually accomplished anything. But that's just about the only stuff that I see out there. And then the hurricane. I bet you if I come over here to Reddit, let's come over and look at Reddit. I bet you that like everything is going to be about hurricanes and trying to make it political somehow. Right-wingers and Islamists would get along great if it wasn't for, no. They have a fundamentally different outlook on approach to other people. And the right-wingers are not nearly as much of a, like, trying to control your life as leftists make it out to be. Like, really, it's just like, they don't think that you should be able to abort your baby. But, like, I think that most religious right-wingers are going to be the most vocal advocates for freedom of speech, for instance. And that's not the case for Islamists. Why MAGA is so pro-Russian is, I find that a little disturbing too. You know what? I haven't seen anything about the hurricane yet. Milton is the hurricane that scientists were dreading from r/climate. Oh, why is it promoting that to me? Dude, we should talk about that. You're right, Octavius. Okay, so yesterday, Kamala Harris was on The View. And while she was on The View, telling people, is there anything that you would change from Joe Biden? There's not a thing that comes to mind. That alone, like her appearance on The View, could be a campaign-ending move. Her comment on there. Because Americans, by and large, are not happy with the way that things have gone under Joe Biden. So how can you possibly say, is there anything that I would have done differently? You might be able to say, what I would say is, well, I was in strong support of him, but there are some things in retrospect that we can see where there were some mistakes made that I would want to change or whatever the deal is. But you can't just say that like, oh, nothing comes to mind. Meanwhile, you're running on hope and change. That's like a campaign ending comment that Harris made yesterday. Holy crap. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has a press conference. We've had like no press conferences his whole presidency. And now all of the sudden in the past few weeks, we've gotten like 2 or 3 or 4, maybe, I think. And it happens to be exactly when Kamala Harris is doing her interview on The View. What is with that? Okay, so what has Kamala Harris been doing, talking about? Well, she was complaining about how Ron DeSantis didn't take her phone call. Ron DeSantis said that, like, he didn't even know that she had called him. And that she's never been involved in campaign response or anything like that, and that he's been working with the administration and that she's a sideshow and they don't really need to talk to her. Well, So Kamala Harris has been pushing this pretty strongly in the media, and like yesterday on Reddit, you saw all of the accounts. They were all talking about that and how, Ron DeSantis's response to the hurricanes is going to be so bad, like Florida is going to flip and all of these sorts of things, right? And then Joe Biden gets out in his press conference and is like, no, we're in contact with Ron DeSantis. He's doing a really good job down there. Just completely. So he calls a press conference during one of Kamala Harris's most visible press appearances. So he's kind of undermining that. And then he says something, Ron DeSantis is doing good, that directly contradicts and undermines the narrative that the Harris campaign is pushing that day. So is Joe Biden just not aware of what the Harris campaign is doing and just kind of made a flub? Like, this is the fourth time or so that something like this has happened since he wore the MAGA hat. So it's kind of starting to become hard to explain this away as just Joe kind of being a dunce. It's now really starting to look like that Joe Biden is like intentionally undermining the Kamala Harris campaign. And like, look, we know pretty much, Joe Biden has pretty much said that he did not want to drop out, that he was basically forced to by donors and everything. Donors weren't giving any money, and that was a problem. And from some other kinds of little like signs and signals that we've gotten, some comments by Nancy Pelosi, it really sounds like that Nancy Pelosi was kind of one of the leading factors behind getting Joe Biden to drop out and go for Harris. It wouldn't surprise me because Nancy has always kind of been partial to like the those kind of up and coming Democrat lawmakers that kind of causing trouble. The squad, right? She was always supportive of the squad. Like normally, the Speaker of the House, the majority, can kind of suppress those people and make them not as big of a deal. But Pelosi kind of promoted them, and it kind of sounds like Pelosi was the one that really, really pushed Biden to get out, and he wasn't happy about it. You could tell when he said that and everything, he wasn't happy about it. Some people speculate that like they put a press release out that was not him. I don't know if I buy that one, but it's possible. But another story that I heard, kind of an unsourced story, but from sources that I think, let's call it a rumor, but a rumor that is likely to be true, but an unconfirmed rumor still, that before Joe Biden dropped out, that aides in the White House were like yelling at each other from across the White House. That the Kamala Harris aides and the Joe Biden aides were arguing and yelling at each other, and the Kamala Harris aides were like, stop dawdling. It's her time. You need to drop out, all of this sort of stuff. And so I'm kind of starting to think now, because he always said, I think that I win, and I think that I stand a better chance of winning than Kamala Harris does. And now you look at the Kamala Harris campaign, and I mean, it's pretty hard to make the case that he was wrong. Like, I kind of think that the Joe Biden campaign would be doing better than the Kamala Harris campaign. She's screwed it up every step of the way. Like last night, one of the things that people have been saying is that sometimes her speeches she seems a little bit too loose, like maybe she's been drinking. That's an accusation that's been thrown at her. Rumors that she's basically an alcoholic. And so what does she do? She goes on the Tonight Show and drinks a beer. I was like, are they allowed to do this on TV? I thought that you weren't allowed to do that. So like, That was a dumb move. And like Colbert, when he asked them what's her favorite beer and everything, why did the campaign not say like, this is a bad idea, yada yada, and now everybody's going to criticize her poor choice of beer and all of these, like, it's just like tactical blunder after tactical blunder. Everything that they do is basically like they take like the most brain dead, a tactical cheesy approach to politics, and then it blows up in her face every time. And Biden was a much more savvy politician than that. And I honestly am starting to think that Joe Biden never really thought much of Kamala Harris, maybe even kind of regretted picking her as his vice president, and is a little bit horrified that she's the nominee. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe Joe Biden thinks that we would be better off with Donald Trump as president, which is like a really crazy thing to say, because I tell you what, the only time that Joe Biden really seems to get animated is when he's criticizing Donald Trump. So how could he possibly be thinking, oh, like maybe Trump is the best thing for us right now? I don't know, man. But it's getting really hard to explain his behavior. She's a drunk and it's obvious. I wish, you know what? I don't know what drunk people are like. I've seen rumors. I've seen the video clips where people say that she's drunk, and I agree. Like, it seems weird, but like, I'm an empirical evidence kind of guy. I don't know how you prove that that's what's happening, but man. It seems like he's throwing small town trims out against the people control. Well, yeah, I think that that's always been a thing, for sure. Like, Joe Biden has always disliked that they keep him on such a short leash, but he also knows that he's made so many gaffes in the past that if he wanted to be president, that's really what he needed to do. And, you know, he's kind of been like always perturbed by that they keep him under lock and key. I also do think that he probably, like the debate that he did so poorly at, I think he probably was sick. They said that he was sick and everything, and we're like, oh, well, that's just like an excuse. And I remember saying that too. But now I'm starting to think, actually, I think he was sick. I think he was very, very sick. And it probably took him a long time to recover, but it seems like now he's recovered. And because he's not the presidential nominee and everything, now he feels like liberated, like he can just go and do whatever he wants. And so what is he doing? He's going out and he's undermining the Kamala Harris campaign. Is that just him being Joe Biden and it just happens to hurt Kamala Harris at every opportunity? I don't know, man. Like if it was that he was just stupid, then logic would, or statistics rather, would suggest that he would help her at least half of the time. But that's not been the case. It's like every time that he's in public, it hurts Kamala Harris. So how do you explain that? I don't think I can explain that any other way other than that, like, he is purposely undermining the Kamala Harris campaign. And like the wild thing about this, when you really start to game these things out, is that it doesn't actually matter if he is intentionally trying to undermine the Kamala Harris campaign or not. Enough Americans are, you know, theorizing about that it could just completely scuttle Kamala Harris's campaign. I mean, like, it seems to me over the last few weeks, like, remember she had like that initial rise, and then we said this is probably peak Harris. And ever since that time, when I look at the Kamala Harris campaign and the moves that they're making and everything, it looks like a campaign that is floundering. It looks like a campaign that thinks they're behind, or at least that it's close, and that they need to do everything in their power to to get a game changer and to equalize things. And that's why, like, all of a sudden she's been on the media and she's doing the media circuit and everything, when she really kept out of the public's eye before that. And the more that the harder it reminds me of Ted Cruz, honestly. I don't know if any of you were around for when Donald Trump was running the first time around, and the last remaining opponent against him was Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz's campaign thought that somehow they would have some sort of an interaction with the voter, like a live unscripted interaction that would really shift the narrative and help Ted Cruz out. And so he was constantly going out, trying to talk to voters, trying to make this viral moment happen. And he just kept getting demolished by the voters that were pro-Trump. and so eventually he gave up. And like, that's what I see in Harris is like she's out there every day trying to find this game changer in it, and the harder that she tries to get it, like, the worse that it gets for her. And now she is saying things that I really like. That one last night, I think I posted it in the Discord, but like somebody said that it was like a Michael Dukakis incident. So man, I don't remember a whole lot about this history. This was before my time. But basically, there was a Democrat candidate, Michael Dukakis, and they were concerned that he didn't have a very good military or foreign credential chops. So they, had him do some visit or something. In the visit, he ended up in a tank. So they had a picture of him in a tank with a helmet. And like, it basically ended his campaign. Like, he became a joke after that. And this was before the time of the internet and everything. And some people have been comparing Kamala Harris's comment that like nothing really comes to mind when asked if there's anything she would do differently from Joe Biden as an equivalent moment. And I think that they might be right. Like, there are gaffes, and then there are gaffes that hit at your greatest weaknesses and like confirm to everybody the things that they're concerned about and just completely undermine the campaign. So the issue is that the Biden administration has not been popular, and Americans are not happy with the performance of the country and the economy as a whole over the last 4 years. You could make an argument that it's not their fault, but that one's kind of hard because like Larry Summers told them not to do it, and he did it anyways, and then we got inflation. So Americans blame Joe Biden for the inflation. And so Kamala Harris comes out with a campaign that's basically like all hope and change. Like, I'm going to change this thing and I'm going to change this thing. And Donald Trump has been making this argument that, well, if you were going to change all of this stuff, why aren't you doing it now? So then they ask Kamala Harris, is there anything that you would do differently? And she says no. That completely undermines the whole messaging that her campaign has set out to do. Like, it's such a catastrophic, it's almost mind-boggling that she would say that. And in the way that she did too, where she's like, well, nothing really comes to mind. And then everybody is like, yeah, because nothing really is in your mind, is it? It was a huge gaffe. Bigger news really than DeSantis not picking up her phone call and everything, but still, Mr. Potato Head would have at least gotten the union vote. Well, that's a big one too, man. You know what? Like, it's a really all Obama though. That's the thing that I think is so interesting, is that this is not the Democrat Party that I know. This is not the Democrat Party that I know at all. And you could kind of see it coming along with with Bill Clinton, where it was like, well, we support the unions and the working class and everything, and he was a working class president, but then he signed NAFTA because, that better trade should help. the working class, right? But then Obama like went all in security state globalism. And now it's not the same Democrat Party. And like, you know, the union voters have figured it out. And it's a huge threat to the Democrat Party. Like one of the things is that there's this talk about like the demographics, right? The demographics are working against the Republican Party right now, right? And you get to a point where with younger voters coming in, if their voting patterns stay the same and, you know, the demographics continue the way that they are, that Republicans just won't be competitive. Hold on a second. I'm getting... Okay. We were like at the top of this range and we swept all the way back across it really quickly, and I'm just kind of trying to sort out why that happened, but it's been a really tight session overall. Anyways, the problem with this whole like demographic destiny issue is that the parties themselves shift as well. And so the big shift that we have seen is now the working class is becoming more Republican. And I really think that the way that things are going, you're going to see a point where really you could see a point where the unions are pro-Republican and the Republican Party kind of becomes pro-union. It could happen. Like there's a point at which the incentives become so strong that happens. And even if like the Republican Party doesn't want to go in that direction, there's going to be enough voters that they will select a candidate that becomes pro-union, you know? People like voting populations shift. And because of the way that the American electoral system is set up, it really sets things up for to mean revert. If one party gets too big of an advantage, the other party will adjust and become competitive again. And so you know, you might have one party that wins most of the time, but it should always be pretty close. This is turning into something. I don't know if there was a headline. I didn't hear anything. Oh, it's Fed's Logan is talking. Unwarranted further easing in financial conditions could also push demand out of balance with supply. The neutral Fed's fund rate is uncertain. Structural economic changes mean it might be higher than pre-pandemic. So Logan is speaking kind of hawkishly, and that seems to be the cause of the selling. Oh, there you go. Uzi already told me that it was Fed Logan. Okay. Geico won't insure Cybertrucks anymore now because they suck. In simple words, bet you they won't be the only ones. Is that for real? Got lied to online, but they still cover. Dude, I don't think we've ever seen anything like the Cybertruck. A product that from every kind of real measure, like the performance of the vehicle, the cost of the vehicle, the durability, and the whole use case for what the truck exists for, it performs so terribly. And yet people are buying them hand over fist. Like they can't make enough of them. They can't keep them. Like they are selling all of the Cybertrucks, even though they're objectively terrible trucks. It's crazy. Apparently they do cover them, but it seems that they might reject certain claims on them. Yeah. Well, did you watch the Whistling Diesel video, man? Basically, they had like these huge concrete pipes, and the truck was, climbing up the pipes. And when it was climbing down the pipes, the tailpipe hit the concrete pipe, and like the whole back bumper basically came off. And then people started talking about it and everything, and it kind of turned out that, like, if you're carrying a boat with your Cybertruck and you go over a pothole where, you know, the hitch moves up and down enough relative to the boat that it'll just snap your bumper right off. And so it's not really suitable for towing, essentially. If you haven't watched that video, it's hilarious. That guy is so weird, because one of the things that he does, I wonder what this well, I can kind of guess what the strategy is, but I wonder how significant of a strategy it is for him. Is like, he'll show something in the beginning that is like a preview of something that's going to happen later in the video that's like super, super crazy, right? And then they won't actually show it. Or if they show it, it's only like a short little clip. So like one of the things that he did in that video was like they like dropped the truck into a house or something like that. And so this is something that, like, most YouTube channels, you do a project like that, you know, you would make a whole thing about like the planning of it and how you did it and everything, and like do slow motions of it. And this is several minutes of content here, right? And he only shows it for like a split second. And so then you're like going back through the video. Did I miss something? Where was this one part that I wanted to watch? You know? So good video. But who knows? I'm sure that there will be like a second edition of the Cybertruck, and maybe it will be better. And there's probably going to be copycats too. Because it's kind of like showing the industry like, oh, actually, if you do a really crazy design, there actually is a market for it. They've always been scared to do things like that. Top Trump ally Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Talking about the, what do we call these? Reverse discrimination policies, making people question whether people got the job because they're qualified or because of other reasons. And FX Macro saying, well, the Trump campaign is basically running on racism at this point. I don't think that it's necessarily like running on racism, like, there's all these people that are actually secretly racist and he calls the dog whistle and then they come out and they vote for them. No, but there are certain tendencies that everybody is prone to that they are preying on for sure. And they're kind of using like racist rhetoric to take advantage of it. I do think that that's happening to some extent. But I think it goes deeper than that. It's like people really, really react negatively to when somebody gets something that they don't think is deserved. That's what they're really running on. Okay, Dallas Fed President Lori Logan says she supported last month's rate cut. She highlights several upside risks to inflation, including stronger than expected demand and looser financial conditions. The FOMC should not rush to reduce the Fed funds target to a normal or neutral level, but rather should proceed gradually while monitoring the behavior of financial conditions, consumption, wages, and prices. She sounds less concerned about labor markets sustaining above target inflation. Labor markets appear close to balanced. As the labor market has cooled, we face more risk that it will cool beyond what is needed. Hi, do you know why the commission is calculated weird in the strategy analyzer? It's like the numbers don't add up. Yeah. So basically the way that it works is this. The NinjaTrader backtester relies on your base account, your base Sim 101 account to do all of its backtesting. So if you, in fact, I don't think, oh no, I have one. I do have one. So like here I have like my connection in my Sim account. I don't have live trading on NinjaTrader. I can only do it in Jigsaw. All of my execution is in Jigsaw. So like if you go to your accounts and you right click on it here, you can edit account and then you can change what your commission type is. And by default it is none. So I have it set to lifetime. If I switched over to NinjaTrader brokerage, I would be on lifetime. Right? And then the commissions and everything will be right. So if you don't come in and change this for the Sim account and set the commissions for the Sim account, then your backtests, even if you set it to use commissions, you'll notice that the commissions are still 0. So that's what you got to do to get the commissions to work correctly in your strategy analyzer. I love it when people ask questions like that, and it's like, I'm probably the only place that you can go to. You went to the right place, Truth, because I've dealt with that before. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's like I haven't seen anybody else talk about it. Should have wished that was a longer answer because it was a good question that I would spend time on, but it's a simple answer. I'm kind of browsing around because it's a relatively quiet day today, even though we have a lot to talk about with the hurricane, but it's kind of like, well, we're just waiting, right? The internet is relatively quiet today, though. Oh boy, here's a thread. What do you think? What are your thoughts on unrealized capital gains taxes? Well, it's a dumb idea. There's probably going to be people talking about, well, if you take a loan against it, then you should be taxed. I'm kind of wondering, because I don't think that would work. Like, doesn't make any sense, because when you borrow money, you're basically creating money. So like you're going to create money, and then the government is going to immediately take some of that money out of circulation. So really all you're doing is you're just limiting the amount of money that they can borrow against it. Doesn't really actually, I don't think that would really actually accomplish anything. Maybe you could say, I think that the most extreme thing that you could do that would actually work to resolve the problem that people think is there is to say you just can't borrow against your stock portfolio. If you want to borrow it, you have to sell it. essentially. And that would probably have really negative impacts too, because then there's lots of things that people wouldn't be able to do because you use those securities as collateral for a lot of loans and stuff like that. So it's probably best to just leave it alone. I kind of hate that people are always like, oh, this is unfair. What we should do is we should take the people that are doing well and drag them back down instead of taking the people that have been having a hard time and find ways to elevate them. And that doesn't mean like, you know, giving them undeserved success or anything, but just looking at what are the things that are kind of in your way and removing them. Like for the middle class, one of the problems that you've got in their way is that they basically can't benefit from their savings. Like if you've saved a ton of money in your 401k account, you can't use that to start your business and do collateral against it and all of those sorts of things, right? You can't touch it until you're 65. So like, why do we have that? Maybe we should just allow middle-class Americans to invest their money and not have to pay taxes on it. No capital gains taxes for people that make under $300,000 a year or something like that. Let's see here. Okay, so truth, maybe my answer didn't solve it. I've changed that, but half of the commission is on the commission and half is under the total trade. Well, so when you run a strategy analyzer, and of course, you select the thing down here, include commission, right? What you should see is commission, right? And this number should be equal to, you know, the round trip commission amount, which is something like $250 or something like that, depending on the contract, times the total number of trades. And it does it not come out to that? Because if it does not, that's weird, and that's probably a bug that you should ask NinjaTrader about. But maybe you just don't have the right template selected. So another thing is that there is, if you come back to the controller, there's like a commissions when you go tools, commissions, and you can change them. You can come in and you can look at it and you can say, okay, I'm doing ZN. Where is it? There it is right there. Minimum commission 0, per unit commission 221. Well, it should be included in the trade itself. I don't think you can get away from that. Yeah. So like, if you take a trade and your strategy tries to scratch it, the backtester should still show, when you're looking at like the trades, should still show that it was a loss essentially. If you want those to show up as 0 and then the commissions all factored in separately, what I would do is I would just do the back test without commissions, without including commissions, and then run it with including commissions and factor the difference that way. That's one of the reasons why a lot of the time when we're doing back tests here, I don't include commissions. Because it's easier for me to see what is the strategy actually doing. And then once I think I've got something that's going well, and I just, you know, oh, it takes a lot of trades, so how much of an impact is that? Then I'll start including commissions. So maybe that's what you're seeing? I don't know. That actually helps. Oh, there we go. There we go. Well, I'm good. I had a thought about something I wanted to look at or check or something, and I've completely lost my... Let's see here. Pi IQ. U.S. Treasury yields turn higher after Fed slogan says more gradual path on rate cuts appropriate. Catch GC from 2636. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, gold is getting hammered pretty hard today, isn't it? The Japanese yen is getting hammered pretty hard this morning. The treasuries are not selling as hard as the Japanese yen is. It seems to me that the carry trade is getting put back on in a really big way. So now I'm coming in here and I'm remembering that I posted something I made a comment on Reddit yesterday and people are arguing with me. About the Electoral College, because this guy is like, we should get rid of the Electoral College, change my view, or whatever the deal is. And like the problem is that the guy didn't make any argument. I said, well, like basically the only argument that you've made is the Republicans shouldn't win. Because he said, like, if it wasn't for the electoral vote, the Republicans wouldn't have won any of these. That's not true. Bush would have won. But you kind of get what he's saying. And then, like, it turns into, like, Republicans should never win. Well, that's exactly why the Electoral College exists. So then they're like, well, no, like, but the real argument is that citizen vote should count the same, which is a pretty good argument so far as democracy is concerned. Well, no, that's not an argument. That's like your thesis. That's what you're trying to argue, but you're not actually giving any reason why. Why do you think that all citizen votes should count the same as opposed to the electoral system that we have now, where it's based on state? What do you think about Gary Norton's course? Why do I get so many questions? I guess we had that interview with Gary Norton. I kind of find it funny that I'm the one that everybody comes to ask questions about Gary. Like, I haven't taken his new full course. I've read the materials from his older course, and I think that there are some really valuable insights in there. Is it worth the however many thousands of dollars that you have to pay for the course? I don't know. Like, the reality is that even if it's the best trading course possible, like if God made a trading course, there's still a pretty strong probability that you're never going to make money from trading. So you really have to weigh what that education is worth to you. And I can't make that determination for you. But I would say that he's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about. He is providing information that you're not going to find anywhere else that's valuable. It's going to make you a profitable trader. Maybe not. The way that he trades is probably the hardest way to trade, especially in modern markets, because you're basically a way of trading that is competing directly against robots. So it's like, Is he sharing his edge? Kind of, but not really, because he is kind of sharing like, okay, here's the basis for how arbitrage and market making strategies kind of work. But you're going to have to apply it to yourself and the resources that you have in the instrument that you're going to trade and all of that. So he is talking about a framework that you use to develop your own strategy, and he's not necessarily giving his edge. Like, he is sharing an edge that was known back in the days before the robots. That is kind of not really an edge, but like a base, like things that you kind of need to know in order to really stand a chance at doing that thing. And then you build your edge off of that. That's what I would argue. So, but I mean, like that's kind of the whole thing, is like, if somebody's giving you an explicit edge, like when I come here on the stream and I say, okay, here's something that we know that we don't think that the market knows. I'm sharing my edge, and by sharing it with you guys, that can potentially harm the edge. Now, luckily for us, we're only talking about probably a dozen contracts on an instrument that regularly trades tens of thousands. So it's not a huge deal. But it is a factor, and, you know, there's a point at which the stream would become so popular that it would become a real problem. Except for that, I don't think that trading treasuries is ever going to get that popular, so we're probably always going to be okay. You know? I have my own, I just want to know the other person. Yeah, but like that's the whole thing, is that like how much you're willing to pay to see that. That's the thing. If you have a lot, listen, I think that you have to have more money than me to be willing to pay for that. I'm between jobs, but even when I was not between jobs, I would not be able to afford the $5,000 or whatever it is to do the whole course. Now, he has some more limited ones where you pay like $300, I think it is, to do a certain part of it. And, you know, that's a different thing. And I don't know, I haven't taken the course to be able to know like which parts have the valuable stuff in it and what ones don't and all that sort of thing. But that's a problem. I mean, this is a problem with all education, right? Really, I'm a little bit skeptical. Well, I don't know. The stuff that I've gotten from Gary Norton, I have not seen anywhere else, really. Like, even if you go and you read studies about how market making and arbitrage strategies work, you will not come up with the insights that he has. They're really insights that I think are only going to be passed between traders that are doing that. And since there aren't really any traders doing that anymore, he's like really is like the only shop in town. Like, that's the only place that you can find that information, right? But it is just like, it's not cheap. So you kind of have to have a lot of disposable income for that to be worth it, because you're talking about buying something that you might not ever get anything back out of it, right? It's like, would you be willing to pay $5,000 for a piece of art? Then it's probably not a big deal for you. But otherwise, most people probably can't. It's not in their budget. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're a college kid and you're really struggling to make ends meet, and you think that maybe trading is the way out and that's the way that you're going to find financial freedom and everything, but first, in order to do that, you have to learn. So you're going to save up for a year or two and spend that $5,000 on some education course, and then that's what's going to bring you to be successful. If that's what you're thinking, then stop. Don't do it. Right? But if you have the money, he has some worthwhile stuff. That's all I mean. I misunderstand you. Okay. Or are you really trying to say, well, you say that like if you share an edge, that it reduces the probability of an edge. So Gary Norton is somebody you've had on your stream, for instance. Does him making that course make that edge less effective? Well, yes, but you kind of have to understand that like what he's doing is something that like the reason that he's not doing it at a firm anymore is that the robots do that job now, right? So is there a place where you can develop the intuition of something that the robots can't and develop an edge in an instrument scalping in the Gary Norton way? Yes. It's going to be the hardest way to trade. It's going to be but there's there's some benefits to the hardest way to trade too, right? Because less people are going to try. I have the course on. Well, if you already have the course, I would absolutely, and you're into trading, I would absolutely read it. Yes, I would absolutely read it. Yes, there are. Yeah, so that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because there are some things out there, like I'll tell you one that I will name by name. Like, I probably shouldn't say these sorts of things and like create feuds with things, but like I've read this content that a particular piece of content that I think is really trash, and it's called Max Price Action Trading System. I think he has a YouTube channel now, but he's got like a little book that he sells for a decent sum of money, and it's very popular in the price action trading community, and I think it's trash. It's basically a bunch of trading platitudes that like anybody that's been within the trading community for a few months will have heard before. And it doesn't provide any value or edge whatsoever. And a lot of the concepts that it's teaching and ideas that it's teaching are just empirically wrong. And I think that it's a waste of your time to buy the PATS system and read it. It's like training you wrong. That's not the case with Gary Norton. Gary Norton has these insights that, like, to a beginning trader, they might not realize how profound they are, because it'll just be like, oh, of course, that makes no sense. And so you've never known anything different. But for somebody that's been coming in and trading and struggling for a long time, and then you go and you read his material and you see some of the insights that he has, and it's just like mind blowing. Like, how come I didn't think of it that way? Why was I not, taking that approach in some things? So if you have it, I would absolutely invest the time in it. I don't know how long it would take, but yeah, I mean, if it was me, if I had the opportunity to do his new course for free, I would 100% be, I would like do nothing else until I finished it. Just because I would be so interested in knowing what he even says, even if I knew that I wasn't ever going to be able to put it into practice. How would you go about coding a long limit order to be active for 2 minutes after a signal happens and be canceled once the 2 minutes have passed? So there might be ways to do it within the order itself, but I think that the simple way of going about this would be saying, when I take a trade, I set an integer to represent the bar that I entered into that trade. And then I say, if I'm in a trade and the current bar is greater than, that bar that I saved plus 2, then I exit the position. And that would get you out after 2 bars. Right? Now, the reason I'm kind of, that's probably like way, I'm making it a little bit more nuanced than maybe I have to be, because I want you to understand what the kind of like positives and negatives of doing it that way might be. Like, if you do it that way, but then you decide that you want to actually run the strategy on 30-minute bars instead, or 30-second bars instead, then that strategy is not going to work, right? You're going to have to do it a different way rather than counting the number of bars. You might have to do something like every bar, save the timestamp, and every bar look at the timestamp and see if the timestamp that has been more than 2 minutes. And even then, the bar, the time frame that you're using for your strategy would still need to be like 2 minutes or less in order for that one to work, right? So then if you wanted to do something that was like, I want it to run it on 30-minute bars, but I only want my order to be active for 2 minutes, then you would really have to do something with the order itself. And I'm not exactly sure how you would do that. I don't know if that's possible or not, but that would be something that we would, Google search for and maybe find an answer, or ask NinjaTrader. Yeah, what's the goal? Like, you're not even trading. Well, so I'm not even trading just because I'm not seeing a lot of opportunity today, right? So, CPI, depending on how CPI goes, right? If CPI comes out and I think that there's something about it that I can kind of find an edge in compared to the rest of the market, then I'm going to take a trade, right? So I'm very selective, right? But I think that the main goal of the live stream is to build the community, right? Essentially, we have a stronger edge by working together. So as now if there was like 5,000 people watching this stream, then it would be a problem, and we would have to change things up, and I would probably change the content to accommodate that different audience, right? But as long as we're a few dozen traders and everything, this is a place where we can work together and collaborate together to improve our edge at that moment. And so that's essentially what we're trying to do. So I'm here, I'm trying to get people up to, like if you're new and you're trying to program something or understand your platform, or, I'm always going to answer those questions, because what I want to do is I want to get you to the point where you know enough. Now you're kind of on the same level as the rest of us, so that you can start contributing and, improving the edge of the group overall as a whole. And so that's really the main objective of the stream, right? And, I think that the YouTube channel has become a kind of an entity unto itself as well. So like the YouTube channel as a whole, there are certain ideas things that we've learned about the markets that I believe are, have significant societal implications that I would like the rest of the world to know about. So we're promoting those ideas and, just trying to make the YouTube channel as a whole more successful. Maybe at some point the channel would become successful enough that I would be able to just focus on the channel and provide even more valuable content for you. There's also that side to it. But the stream itself is a little bit of a separate thing, because, most people are not going to come in and watch a live stream of a guy trading treasuries and talking about treasuries, right? Like, it's an esoteric thing. Most people can be bored by that. You'll never get the same trade. I don't know what you were responding to on that one, but got it. Is it worth a try? Thanks. I will create a property to choose how many candles in that time frame. There you go. Yeah, that would be the easiest way to do it, for sure. And in fact, here's another thing that I'll say. Having a strategy that it holds the trade for a certain amount of time, rather than for a certain stop and target, for instance, is a really valuable for your kind of experimentation in backtesting. Seeing, okay, I have a signal. How far does the market tend to move after that signal? As opposed to limiting it by looking for a stop and target. And, all of the trades have the same time in the market that can tell you really interesting things and actually help you find an edge better. And then once you've kind of found that signal, you can change your profit taking strategy to something different so that it's not time limited. You will never get the same trade performance. There are so many things that come into play when you trade in the short term: internet, hotkeys, PC equipment, verified trading performance, K info. I mean, so I wouldn't expect anybody to be trying to duplicate my performance if that's what you're talking about. I feel like maybe I missed a comment or something. I don't know. Anyways, still getting comments from Fed speakers, by the way. But I have to say, this is still a really tight market considering what we're getting from the Fed speakers. Oh, to Gary. Well, for that matter, what is Gary's performance? I don't know what it is. And again, it's one of those things that's like, well, the reason that he's not doing it for Goldman Sachs or whatever is because they use robots for that stuff now. Okay, based on your experience of 7 years, I have 2 years. What is harder, making decisions on the short term based on the moment, buy, sell volume, or on the long-term vision? Oh, man. So I think that to have success in day trading, short-term day trading, is probably one of the most difficult endeavors a person can take on. Most people are not going to be successful with it. And the challenge in day trading is that you're trying to develop an intuition. So you kind of have to get to the point where you just kind of know what is going to happen, and you can act almost on instinct without completely understanding why you're doing it. And that's a really hard thing to develop, and most people are not going to develop that. Okay. But a longer term strategy, like especially a stock picking strategy, can be incredibly complicated. And there are a lot of things to know and a lot of things that you can potentially incorporate into that strategy. Now you're talking about the sorts of things that, like, when you do it professionally, it's not just any one person that comes up with that, right? It's a strategy that has taken on the contributions of, potentially thousands of people sometimes, right? And so that is incredibly complicated as well. So, like, one is harder in that you're less likely to make it happen and be successful with it, whereas the other one is harder. Like, you're going to have to put even more effort into it to make something work, right? Like, I would love to be able to have the time to come in here and do a really detailed analysis of every futures instrument and what we think the flows are going to be, and have reports and stuff like that, and have like quantitative data to back it up. That would be a full-time job, right? Or I would love to run a hedge fund. That would be a full-time job. Whereas this is probably harder. This is probably harder, but I can just focus on it on those 3 hours a day. Yeah. Time is for the limit order to enter the market. That's something worth looking at. I've seen some weird things when you have like delayed entries. Like you have some sort of a trigger. That's where you'd have like a Boolean, and you'd say, okay, at the beginning of the strategy, it has that Boolean been set. So like some trigger has been set. And then maybe I'm waiting for a second trigger to get set before I actually enter an order in. And then when you exit a position, you have to reset those triggers. That's the way that the Smart Money Concepts backtest that I did worked. It's not a profitable strategy. It's something that I think is kind of funny because the results of it suggest that it made money for a while, primarily because of the popularity of a YouTube channel. But it was a, you know, that was one of the things that we had to be able to use to be able to perform the strategy that those people were using. When is the CPI? It is tomorrow. Let me show you. It is tomorrow at 8:30. And pull up the chart over here. If you go to forexfactory.com, you can see this. I'm not logged in. Hold on a second. Do I have that password saved? So it's showing me Eastern time. It's not. Maybe I just use my regular password. No. Anyways, it's tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern time. Headline CPI is forecast to be spot 1 versus a previous reading of spot 2, and the core CPI is expected to be spot 2 versus a previous reading of spot 3. And remember, the core CPI is the CPI without the food and energy components, because those tend to be more volatile. Ergo, core CPI tends to be a better indication of what the longer run inflation is going to be. And it's going to be pretty, it's like basically the biggest event this week. I don't know. I tell you what, man, when the 10-year treasury can only go like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ticks, can only go 9 ticks, and there were Fed speakers speaking during that time, that's a tight market, right? Not a very good opportunity here for us in the treasuries, I don't think. But CPI will probably be busy. Yeah, I'm not trading something that is watched millions of times on. Yeah, no. I was just pointing out that that's where you would go and look if you wanted to see. Like, I posted the code for that. It's on Discord somewhere. So if you wanted to go and look at how I did that, you could go find it. This session has actually gone by relatively quickly for me, considering how slow it has been. I am maybe seeing some things that make me think that all other things being equal, that they might need to do a little bit of rebalancing. The issue is, oh, you know what? I'm not even sharing that. I should be doing that. I could set up this stage. There we go. So for those of you that are on the paid Discord, I have to say, I'm sharing my screen for the paid Discord, the chart screen, this screen, so that you can keep an eye on this this line right here. If we were to go and make a beeline for that, I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's there. I kind of see the possibility. I'm actually quite liking the way that the Discord does. So I'd like to see some more activity, but we've got a decent number of people, and you don't want the paid Discord necessarily to be like huge, because kind of part of the idea of it is to have more, a slightly smaller, more dedicated group of people providing content and everything. So, and then not be bothered by the robots. So I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far. You think that you have to let your edge on the market secret and not sharing it on public? So if your edge is like a mechanical setup, yes, don't share it. Okay, sharing it will even for these momentum guys. Like it's kind of seems to me that momentum did so well during the pandemic, and the momentum funds got so big that it is hampering the profitability of those strategies in the years since. I think that's a real, I don't know how we would be able to prove that or anything, but that's a theory that I have. I really think that might be a factor in the performance of, okay, what do I mean by mechanical? I mean, like, you have strict, explicit rules for the market does this thing, the market does this thing, all of these conditions are met, and then I take a trade. And it's not discretionary. Should you live stream your trades? If you want to. Oh, hands parlay. I don't trade futures, but I do trade ETFs, so I'll probably soon try. Well, thank you. I'm glad to have you, Hands. And thank you for joining our Discord and for chatting with us in the Discord stage. Yeah. Another thing I would say is, like, if it's a day trading strategy, right? Like, the market is very, very random on the short time frames. So if you found some sort of mechanical setup, I would not share it. But I'm a little bit skeptical that any kind of mechanical day trading strategy that a retail trader can take advantage of actually exists. I'm not sure if it actually exists. At least not in futures. Maybe with stocks, when you can kind of pick which stock you're going to trade for that day, and that might provide enough of an advantage for a retail trader. But in futures, like, this idea that you can take a futures instrument and just look at a 1 minute chart, and then based on the 1 minute chart have mechanical entry and exit signals that will be profitable over a 5-year time period, I honestly don't think it exists. So if you did find it, don't tell anybody. Keep it to yourself. But what's going to happen more often is, sorts of like the things we were talking about yesterday, where it was like, okay, well, there are some times where traders can get trapped, and that can kind of cause a little bit of mean reversion. And here's a situation where that appears to happen, and here's what kind of keyed me off to it. And you're including that in, like, your larger discretionary strategy, right? So it's like you're watching it, and you're combining all of these other factors. Now you're getting into something that's more to do with intuition and to do with you and your own feel on things, right? And so nobody else will be able to duplicate your intuition. Yeah. Now, another thing would be, like, is there a mechanical strategy that you could make based on order flow? Like, I was saying, if you just take a 1 minute price series, can you do it with order flow? Well, I think that there can be. I think that they might be pretty involved and hidden, and it's really hard to backtest those, and so that's would be part of the reason why such an edge might still exist, right? But at the same time, they're probably more likely to be very short term. Like, there's definitely some order flow based signals out there, but you have to be fast. Are you tracking your performance? Yes. So because I use Jigsaw, it's just built into Journalytics, right? So I can go back and look at all of my trades. And like one of the things that I do that you can kind of get fooled by your performance, right? If you're doing something where you're going to win most of the time anyways, then your brain is just naturally going to think that you're a god, and you're going to become overconfident and do something stupid. That's just the way that we are built. So I would highly recommend, especially if you are a new trader and you haven't been humbled like that, to trade equal risk reward, right? So I'm going to go through on a monthly basis and look at, what is my hit rate? If I'm taking equal risk reward, what's my hit rate, and see how well I'm doing. You're probably still going to be under 50%, most people. But, I want to be like 45% or higher. Then I'm doing really, really well. And that's going to tell me, how well do I understand this market? How well am I doing? And are these certain other things that I've kind of been looking at and thinking about, are they actually benefiting me or not? But because we record the stream here and I have all of the trades recorded in Journalytics, I have all of the information that if I ever want to go back and look at an individual trade, I can go and see everything about that trade. So I think that tracking performance is a really important thing, but it's just like, I don't have to do anything to do it because it all just happens automatically for me. Yeah, no, if you a discretionary trade on order flow less than 2 minutes. So the other thing is, like, you could have a strategy that, really works, but we wouldn't really, okay, so there's another thing. There is a natural tension between taking on risk and being certain, right? So the more certain you are about something, the less risk that there is. But that also means the less opportunity that's going to be available to you. So to really make money, you have to take certain risks. And the thing that's kind of unfortunate is that the level of risk that you have to take for a retail trader to be successful with this is going to be a lot more than anything that really allows you to see, like, does something work, right? So, like, for me to come in and say, this is a profitable strategy, enough for me to, like, make a video about it and tell other people about it, that this is, like, a proven market behavior or whatever the deal is, I say 5 years. Like, I can say momentum is a strategy with a history of performance. Because there's many people that have made money over timeframes much larger than 5 years, being very successful with momentum portfolio strategies. That's a swing strategy, not a day trading strategy, but it is a profitable strategy, right? So I can make a video and I can say that, right? But for something for you to trade, I think that the bar is much lower. That you're kind of have to be taking trades on things that you're not able to completely prove, and you're just gonna have to go and do it for like 5 years. So that's like, you could trade it, just don't go and tell people, oh it works. We've found a mechanical strategy, it actually does exist. Can't say until you've been doing it for 5 years, right? And then after you've been doing it for 5 years, I don't know, go and find a researcher and explain the strategy and publish it or something. But then that might destroy it and you wouldn't make money anymore, so you're probably not going to do that. I scratch most trades or go one tick on ES, so I don't know about that one. There you go. If you have a mechanical setup, you must have several different setups because it does not work in all kinds of markets. Sure. I think there is something to, like, you're going to have like a combination system. So you have like 10 different strategies, and your algorithm or your discretion is going to pick which one of those strategies to use based on market conditions. That's probably one way that you can go for it. Although I would still say that, like, when you're looking at an intraday time frame, because I've made systems like that, even on an intraday system, there's just so much noise that it's very hard to get something mechanical to work. Why would you tell anyone does Renaissance? No, they don't. They're very secretive about it. It seems to me that Renaissance technology has made like 4 or 5 major statistical and market innovations that they're not telling everybody about. They started with momentum as far as I can tell, and they've gone like way beyond that. And who knows what the nature of the edges that they're taking advantage of now. And I would love nothing more in life than to go and work for Renaissance technology and learn all of those things. And I'd never be able to trade them, and I'd never be able to tell you about them. But it's the call of Tzeentch, man. It's just that knowledge, this idea that there's this knowledge out there that you don't have that could potentially give you power. And if not give you power, just, you know, the knowing the things and where you can go with knowing those things from there is a mighty temptation to me, let's say. There is a point at which this kind of desire to just devour as much knowledge as possible can kind of consume you in a negative way. I call it the Call of Tzeentch, because that's in Warhammer 40k. The god of chaos and knowledge is Tzeentch. And Tzeentch lives in a realm that is a maze of mirrors, so complicated that only Tzeentch's most powerful demons can navigate it. And it's just a constant warping, confusing mess, just like Tzeentch is. Right? And that's him. That's him out there. He's saying, you don't know this. You should learn this. You should learn this. Oh. Well, desire for knowledge is useful, but it can go too far. Reminds me, there's another story I kind of want to talk about today that we haven't talked about is that there has been another major development in the UFO story. And it is starting to get into one of those things where it's like, maybe your desire for knowledge can be harmful sometimes. Like, so the story is basically, there was this guy like Lou Elizondo and some other people that were basically hired to look into the UFO thing and see like what kind of information do we have within the military about UFOs and whatnot. And they kind of got some information that like we do have some alien technology and things of that nature, that like whistleblowers were telling them this, but no like firsthand information. And they resigned because they felt that there was like a competing unit out there in the military that was like trying to beat them to that information and hide it. And so the new story is that this guy has kind of gotten sick of like waiting around and trying to sort all of that, you know, the disclosure fact of it, because they're basically saying that the military is hiding it from Congress and that it's illegal. And this guy basically got sick of it and basically named the program, the competing program that was undermining them. And if you go to the Reddit UFO subreddit, they're all talking about it. So you can, I'm kind of afraid to use the term on my stream because they were saying that if you used the term, that it immediately put you on a watch list. Like, that's crazy, scary stuff, right? And, you know, I don't know how... What is the word? I don't know how reliable or authoritative this story is and everything, but it's a significant development on this whole UFO story, and kind of fits into the thing that's been going on. That it's still like either there are aliens and the government is hiding it from us, or like government employees are like perpetuating a hoax of some sort. Because like, holy crap. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff. And that's where it's kind of like, it's the Call of Tzeentch. Like, you want to go in and learn all of these things, forbidden knowledge. There's forbidden knowledge that you want to have. And I'm telling you, man, there are certain things that you're maybe just better off not knowing. There's some, everybody wants to know, hey, there's the Federal Reserve is somebody's been using the discount window at the Federal Reserve. You don't need to know, guys. You don't want to actually know that. Some knowledge that's better left covered. And if you somehow came across information about aliens, I would recommend you keep it to yourself. We all want to know, and I hope that they, if something illegal is going on, that it's outed and everything. And I totally support these guys that are like trying to get it out if they're really legitimate and everything. But like, if you're an average person, okay, and you come across aliens or something, I would keep my mouth shut. I would be like, you know what? Like, if I got into a special access program or something like that, I would just be doing my job. I wouldn't be trying to like tell everybody about it. Like this whole thing with the, what is his name? That like, he said that he worked on a UFO, like reverse engineering it and everything. And then when he got out, he started telling everybody. I would never do that. Never do that. Some things should probably remain hidden knowledge because the world's, you're not necessarily ready for it. Call of Tzeentch. Real hurricanes and real things going on. Idiots on Reddit's alien, right? But man, it is pretty crazy, Paul? I mean, like here's the thing, okay? Like, of course, people on the internet, they will dig up and make stuff happen, right? And the alien UFO community has always been about like stupid stuff. Like one of the things that subreddit really went deep into was, there was this video a long time ago that basically showed a 747 being surrounded by like other alien UFOs. And when it was first posted, everybody said like it's a hoax, obviously. And then it popped up again. And the people on the UFO subreddit took it so seriously. Like, everybody's coming up with these reasons for why it couldn't possibly be faked, which is kind of weird. It's like, shouldn't you be looking for things that would prove that it is fake? Wouldn't that kind of be an easier way to approach it? Okay, whatever. Like, they're just totally obsessed with it, right? But this larger story is not that. This larger story is that there's like 4 or 5 guys in the U.S. military that say that they have they have reason to believe that the government knows that there's aliens and that the government is hiding it from them. And like they're testifying in Congress and stuff. So it's like a completely different level of a story. It's so funny. I just popped back in here for some random reason, and the last time I asked you about UFO sightings in Maui. Oh, that is funny. Oh, yeah, I remember you, Matthew. That's funny. It's funny that I decided to bring that up now. Hey, listen, it's a slow session. It's a slow session. And I've been watching a lot of Warhammer lore. And Tzeentch is obviously, if I was in the Warhammer universe, I think that I probably would have become a minion of Tzeentch at some point. Right? It's like you're just curious about things, you want to know more and more, and next thing you know, you're sprouting 6 arms and all of this stuff, right? And so when I think about that, what kind of implications does that kind of mythology, to me, Warhammer is a mythology. What kind of lessons does it have for us in our day? Well, thirst for knowledge is a good thing, but can it go too far? Yes. And there is this thing where, like, man's desire for knowledge so that they can exert power over other people can be a very powerful and destructive force that will destroy you. Yes. That's what happened to Saruman too, wasn't it? So he wanted to know things, and he started talking to Sauron through the little globe thing, and that's what corrupted him. Beware the minions of Tzeentch, guys. I also think that one of the things, like, about part of the call of Tzeentch is learning things that aren't actually a thing. You know? Like, you just want to absorb information and knowledge, and you're not putting any kind of skepticism or exerting any kind of real skeptical analysis of it, and you just accept nonsense. And it turns you into, like, it warps and distorts you to the point where, like, you just can't even think straight anymore. Wow, well, a tornado just touched down in southern Florida near I-75. I thought that we weren't supposed to be getting any action until this evening. Oh. I know. Anyways, the UFO thing. The reason why that one is worth pointing out is that this story has been going on for years now, right? And they've basically been saying, like, we want, like, gradual disclosure. And a lot of the UFO people have been, like, hypothesizing, like, is this part of, like, a gradual disclosure to the people, like, preparing us for it and everything, so that when we do find out about it, it's not such a big shock and everything. But this story kind of suggests that there are people working against the disclosure, and that the people in favor of the disclosure have basically decided to go nuclear and are just going to do chaotic disclosure and just out everything. So maybe that means that we start to get to a conclusion on it soon. Now that the name of the program has been outed, if that's true, I would expect Congress to be able to get to the root of this within a few years. So, like, if we're sitting here another 5 years and we still don't have evidence that whether aliens are real or not, then I think that it's probably a hoax at that point. They predicted the tornadoes, or we were told to stay home today. I'm just surprised that there's enough storm activity already there. Again, I feel like I just don't know enough about how hurricanes tend to go, man. I've been joking a lot lately about wanting off this planet, a lot of alien movies, and joking even last night, like, a serious invitation. My intuition really drew me over, like, ASAP. That's funny, man. Well, okay, so, like, if you're talking about the alien lore, like, one of the things that is kind of interesting with all of this alien lore is that even though supposedly the government knows that there's aliens and knows quite a bit about the aliens and is, like, reconstructed their tech and everything else like that, they don't really know what the aliens are or what they want or what their motivations are. So, like, I'm just saying, like, this whole thing, like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you're drawn to the aliens and you want to go with them. Take me with you, sort of a thing. The current alien lore kind of suggests that you should be really careful with that sort of a thing. That what they're likely to do is kill and dissect you. Like... So be careful, okay? If you come across aliens, be careful, please. My biggest concern is that Kamala is Sauron. My biggest concern is that Kamala is exactly what I think she is. a diversity hire with no real political skills that is completely unprepared and incompetent and unable to function as the executive of this country. That's what scares me the most. Because I tell you what, there's never been a situation where I've come in here and I've sat here and like every step of the way along the presidential campaign, I'm like, they are floundering. Like, this is the worst politician that I've ever seen. It's really quite wild. And maybe to some extent, I've been spoiled by the Democrat politicians, okay? Barack Obama was a good politician. He was a smart guy. He played the game well. Hillary Clinton, I think that to some extent, she played the game really well. Joe Biden, he has some really big negatives, and I'm really surprised that he was able to be president. But he's also got this thing, like, people liked him in the beginning, right? Like in 2020, people had a really favorable opinion of Joe Biden. He was kind of like, Uncle Biden sort of a thing. But Kamala Harris, it just seems like she is doing all the wrong things every step of the way, and it scares me that she could actually win. I'm an alien, Seth. No, I do not want to come to Planet X. No, if you would like to use your technology to help me here in my day trading indoor YouTube channel, I would totally appreciate it. I might be susceptible to the call of Zinch and, learn some secret alien knowledge and technology that I probably shouldn't know. But I do not want to come to Planet X. I think that I belong here, and that there are major things that I'm supposed to accomplish in this life. I think that we know things about markets that not everybody knows, but that everybody should know. Oh, hold on a second. That is my doctor. Let me get this phone. If this is all true, why was I drawn over here so fast? Or why were they trying to... I don't know, man. Why would they... What makes you think that you thinking to come on to the live stream today and we're talking about aliens, that's some sort of a signal? If we break here, you think we'll get to the cost basis? I mean, it does kind of look like the setup that I've been waiting for, right? Like when we were down here at 12, I was kind of seeing the possibility for it, and now we're like 2 ticks higher. So yeah, I feel like I was looking for the spot that you usually go for, and I was able to identify it this time. But I'm still not confident in taking a trade on it. Like, it's been kind of tight. There's more Fed speakers coming. It's an auction day. I don't know. Well, I do think that even with all of that, if I were to take a trade, the trade is probably there at 13, and they're giving you an iceberg there at 13 too, so that's probably as good of an opportunity as you could get. Although that's kind of looks like an iceberg that's like maybe there was a buyer and he's already filled, and so the opportunity's already passed. My first thought was talking to you about alien. Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. I would hope that if you were drawn to my live stream because of some supernatural power, like God was leading you over here, that it's because God needs you to make a ton of money. That's what I think. I saw, so in my job search, though, I came across a position that was basically for the hedge fund that the LDS Church runs. And like the job description fit my skills so well, I was like, did God make a position for me? I was kind of like reading it and thinking like, this has got to be a trick or something. So this fits me too well. I don't think that they're going to interview me for it. I haven't gotten anything back from them. Probably today would be when somebody would look at, like, the people that get back to me, they usually get back to me within 2 days. So like if I don't get something back from them today, then probably they're not going to interview me. And it's probably because it sounds like it's a little bit more senior of a role than the roles that I've had. I'm like a senior site reliability engineer, and this looked like this was a level above that, and kind of more of the mentor path, not the manager path, but the mentor architect kind of path. So I would expect them to not be as interested. But I was thinking, I was like, is this a sign? Like, I don't know. All the MBOs moved, price should move more freely. That is interesting. I mean, I find the flows today to be a little bit curious, right? Because there is definitely here in the 10-year a downward flow, but it's kind of been moderating here. So that's the sort of thing that you kind of start to see when it's like the big meta order is done and then maybe rebalancing comes through. I should also point out that the cost basis really came down there. So like a 15 looks like a really good possibility. And then when you look at the other ones, it's pretty random over here in the 30 years, pretty random over here in the 5-year, but maybe slightly gradually up in the 5-year. But one thing that gives me pause is there is a little bit of flattening over here. So I don't know, given all of that, and then add on top of that the only major flow that we've got today is the auction, which tends to be a buy. I do kind of like the idea of like buying 13. Well, they did get through that big iceberg. So the problem when they get through a big iceberg is like if there's somebody that's persistently buying, they may have just gotten completely filled there. So, well, and there's another tick down. So it's funny because my brother-in-law, actually his ex-Mormon, convinced me that the aliens were just normal planes, but the wind in Maui made them sound different. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, because kind of the weird thing about, well, not the weird thing, but like the connection that I guess that Mormons have to quote-unquote aliens is that Joseph Smith claimed that, and actually wasn't that he claimed, it was in the Book of Moses that he translated, which basically was like there was some papyri, or Book of Abraham, I think it was. There was some papyri that he found that he got in possession of that he claimed to translate, and that it said this stuff. And I tell you what, man, there's like so much stuff on these about like what they maybe actually were and all this other crazy stuff. Hugh Nibley wrote books like stacks the height of the ceiling about this stuff. But anyways, and in there it said that like that there was a hierarchy amongst the stars, and that God lived near a star called Kolob. Okay, so there's kind of this idea that like God is an entity that whose throne of power is somewhere else in the universe, and that he has other worlds, that he has put human life on other worlds as well. And so that's where it kind of comes into the alien stuff. And one of the things with aliens in the alien lore that is popular on the internet, some people hypothesize that the aliens are like demons of some sort. But then there's this other happening that keeps happening. People claiming to have seen aliens, and in one case, like an entire village claiming to have seen aliens, that have the same description as when Joseph Smith said that he had his first vision, like two beings that are really tall with white hair. And well, the alien lore people call them the Nordic aliens. So it's like there's different aliens, and one of them is the Nordic aliens. So like one of the theories is that the Mormon Church is actually was started by the Nordic aliens and all this stuff. So like that's why that's the thing. And so I think that some LDS people have a propensity. I think that's kind of what interests me about, or kind of drew me into it, was when I was reading about the Nordic aliens, and I was like, hey, that sounds familiar. Okay, well, they after the iceberg, they did come down 2 ticks. Right? So, like, I did kind of call that was a problem. But now that problem is past, if we still think that we're getting the rebalancing trade is going to come in, like, that we're even in a better spot to take it now at 12, right? Problem being, though, that there was a pretty decent change in cumulative delta on the short side. So I don't think that I could really justify taking a trade right here, because what I'm seeing right now kind of suggests to me that the yield curve is still flattening. Like, you see there's buying in the 30-year over here, buying over here in the 30, but then they're selling in the rest of them. So there's a flattening move going on here, and like there's flows continuing to sell. And so I'm not sure if they're going to make it. But if they were going to do it, one other thing that we could take with all of that is that there might be a case to be made that to take it in the bond instead of the treasury. Let's see. Okay, so Octavius says that there is 76,
Block
60
sell.
stuck at 13. Wait, are you saying that if we go much lower, that you could start to see some of those guys puke and we could break lower? I could see that. I know that was a pretty big market sell that just came through. 3K at 12 and a almost 7K iceberg that they got through. It kind of seems to me at the moment that there is a big buyer out there, but that the sellers are beating them right now. So that is a really big shift. I mean, I was looking for it's pretty quiet and there's going to be rebalance maybe, and they're going to hit the... It doesn't seem like that's what's going on right now. I kind of think that that's enough to maybe abandon the whole idea. Now, that doesn't mean that we should now switch to let's go short and it's going to breach the low. Those 2 icebergs could just constrain price, right? You think they'll cover? But do you think that they're stuck long at 13? Are they stuck in long or short? Stuck short. At 13. Gotcha. So you're looking at the market orders that hit into this iceberg at 13, essentially. Okay. So then here's a question. How far does it have to get before you think that they take their profits? You know, like what if, okay, they went short, it went down 2 ticks or whatever, and then they took their profits. They bought it, like they were the iceberg at 12 or something like that. They've rebalanced it. So now if you come back up, that imbalance and trap traders aren't really there. So how do you sort that out? Or are we just assuming that, like, if I saw a big trade and it's been a certain amount of time and they're not winning, that they're gonna get screwed over? I'm kind of leaning towards right now, though, that the market might start to rotate between 12 and 13 and get stuck. Both time and if they are getting paid. Well, probably the 2 ticks that they got might not be enough, right? Probably would need to be more like 4 or more ticks. Seems like 4 or more ticks is like the average swing. Stocks and bonds back in agreement on low recession risks. Boeing nukes contract offer with union as S&P warns about potential negative credit rating on prolonged strike. Harris attempts to blame Trump for FEMA hurricane relief failures. Oh, okay. What's a net change? Is it helps? Wait, where did I send net change? I don't even remember saying that word. Oh, on the market analyzer. So that would be the change in the price since the close of the extended session yesterday. So that's going to include the movement that they had overnight, that percentage change in it. So that is like a good way of me determining, okay, what's moving today. So like oil's down 2%. 2% is a pretty big move, right? Oil's down 2%. The rest of the markets are pretty, it's not really doing a whole lot today, right? So that's kind of what I look at. And then you have the daily volume. But for that, you kind of have to be watching it really closely and know how much volume is normal for that thing, which I don't do. So I have that up there so that I can learn those sorts of things, but I'm not. Like ZN 721, that's low. Normally we're over 1 million. We got like 5 minutes left too. You know what really drove me over here is some psychic told me I need to study finance/money. Well, wait, are you in school? How old are you? Because, like, if you're not in college, your ability to get into the finance industry is kind of limited. So you're probably not going to get a job in the finance industry, but maybe you need to be starting to study things more about, like, how do I decide when it's time for me to buy a house and things like that, you know? Been following training. Oh, it's a sign from God that it's time for you to become rich, Matthew. I'm gonna run with that one. Even though that's probably not what's the truth, and it's probably irresponsible to push that idea. I think Matthew knows better, and it will be fun. Yes. I'll be checking in on you every day now. Okay, are you rich yet? Oh, you're 42? You're older than me. All right, listen, there's some gray hairs there. I think, though, I don't think it's gotten worse through this ordeal that I'm going through right now, so. I think you've had a great head and a solid start. Thank you very much. I try very hard. I feel like that in some respects this year, there are certain things that we've gotten better at, and there are certain things that I've gotten not as good at. And as of late, the number of opportunities where, like, we really knew something about the markets that really gave us a strong trade in treasuries before it happened has not been happening as often for me. I feel like behind the curve so often now for some reason. I'm still pretty good on the political front. I think I've been able to kind of call what's happening and likely to happen in the politics this year pretty well. But for instance, on the interest rates and it ending up being a 50 basis point cut, I was super skeptical the whole time up until like the day before. I was like, there's no way it's going to be a 50 basis point cut. But there was. So I was late to that one. And I wish, I'm between jobs right now, so I have time to do things. Most in the mornings, I spend most of that time doing resumes and stuff. I'm not hitting it as hard right now because like the list of ones that I've got are all of the ones that like, there's reasons I didn't submit them on that day. I decided to spend my time on the ones I thought were the most likely for something to happen, right? So I'm like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Plus, I've got enough in the pipeline right now that I don't necessarily... Like, one of the things is, like, you can only handle so many in the pipeline, so you don't necessarily want to go out and throw another 100 resumes out when your schedule's already full, right? But, I want... And I've been doing reading as well. I've been doing reading, some good reading. I've learned a lot from my reading. But I haven't been able to put as much into, get as far with the stream as I thought, because I thought, just 1 week should be like tons of videos and stuff, but it hasn't quite been that yet. But we're getting there. We're getting there. And today I should have time, so. I can't believe you of all people don't have a job. Yeah. You know what? Like, I talked about it one time. And after that, I'm kind of like, I shouldn't really talk about it. But the gist of it is that the industry that I was in was cars, and car dealerships aren't doing very well. And so I think that they were intentionally trying to cut costs. And since I was the most recent hire, you're the first one to go because you're going to be making more than other people simply because you're more recent, right? I think that was a factor, honestly. So, you know what? I like the bigger picture. I was kind of thinking about leaving because I wasn't thinking about leaving. I had been actively looking at other places because it didn't seem to me like it was really going to further my career. Because, like I'm in site reliability engineering, probably like the next step would be to like lead a site reliability engineering team or something like that. And, like they didn't really seem to understand the strategy behind a site. And if you don't have a person in the organization already that has a lot of power and is pushing that sort of a thing, it's not really going to happen. It's not going to work. So I had kind of realized early on that it was probably a doomed venture of sorts, and that I was going to need to shift in some way. And it just forced me to do it faster than I wanted to. Right? Like I was like, I want to at least be there for a year. And then once I had been there for a year, that's when I started starting to submit stuff again. So I don't know. Some of the places that I've been looking at, of course, you never know until you start working on it. But some of the places that have been interviewing me seem to be places where I'm like, okay, I can see myself working there for 7 to 10 years. A little bit better suited to me. I think like the culture and so forth better suited. So well, I hope. The thing that sucks is like the way that they went about it. It's like, okay, well, your health insurance should last until the end of the month. Okay, cool. So the 2 remaining days of the month, thanks. Jeez. Like, did they do it when they did it and everything on purpose to like maximize how much I'm screwed over? Because, if they really wanted to screw me over, it wouldn't have been any different, right? They did it at the end of the month, and oh my gosh, it's been bad. but I save a lot, have a strong safety net, so I'm okay. I can only imagine most people would be so screwed. Most people would be so screwed. One thing that's been concerning me is that my child has been throwing up. Like, he hasn't hardly eaten anything in 3 days now. Like, there's a certain point at which you have to go to the hospital and everything, and then you don't want to do that when you don't have insurance. So it's been a little bit stressful, but I think we're going to be okay. We give him Sulfran and he's been okay, so that means that we'll be able to get him to eat and water and he'll be fine. And like I said, I have some stuff I'm interviewing. I'm pretty hopeful about them. We'll see how it goes. Of course, there's a certain point, like if we get into November and we're still in this spot, then I'm really going to be hurting. Really going to be hurting because, hiring's not very good in November and December, right? Yeah. So, I think one of the things that happens is that organizations try to gaslight you. They're like, you get criticized for these things and you get put on performance plans and you're told all these things so that like when you get fired, you're down on yourself and you think, oh, I'm not so bad. But I am not susceptible to gaslighting. I look back on it and I'm like, okay, well, this was unreasonable. This was stupid. This was stupid. This was stupid. I was doing more work than other people. I was doing good work. I was getting praised by like the direct managers, so it didn't affect me, like I'll go through some periods where I kind of start to question myself again, but then I go back down through the logic and I'm like, no, this is stupid. You're being manipulated. So, like, are they at a big loss without me? I mean, like, you're a small person in the organization, right? The bigger thing is that I think that they're giving, maybe, they could be giving their competitors like a really huge opportunity, right? So, yes, I believe I come here because you're one of the most sound logical people. Well, I don't know if I'm as, nobody is perfectly logical, right? But I'm going to be more logical than the average person because of the medication and everything. Yeah. It's a weird thing. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's weird. Well, one of the things that I think is funny about the hiring world, by the way, is that it seems to me that companies care more about what industry you were working in than, let's say, than I anticipated, right? Like, there's been some jobs where I'm like, oh, this sounds like exactly the sort of thing that I do and that I'd be good at, and like I'm well suited for it. And like I meet all of the technologies that they're using and everything really well, and I don't get called back. And I'm like, well, that's so weird. Is like that a real job listing? I wonder. And then meanwhile, I get other ones where, I don't know if I really matched their technology stack super well, but it's in the same general industry. And so they're super, super interested in talking to me. I found that a little weird. SRE, the cloud, yeah, we're basically doing the cloud thing. So this is an interesting thing. Oh, well, I don't know if we really have time to talk about this. I'm supposed to get going, but I'll talk about it anyways because I don't have to go anywhere or anything. So the way that this worked in the technology world was back in the day, you had system administrators, right? Where you were on the servers, on the machines, and, maybe you had to telnet into it or whatever, but, and you would run commands and everything to keep the servers running or whatever the deal was, right? And then starting in maybe the late 2000s, but definitely the early 2010s, which is when I came into the industry started to move into the world we call DevOps, which is where, people really shouldn't be getting on machines and running commands by hand because there's a lot of error in all of that. It should really all be implemented as a code, infrastructure as code, and automated, essentially. And so this is a world that was called DevOps. Okay. This is DevOps. And what site reliability engineering was at Google, they had a problem where the development teams wanted to put releases out all of the time, but the DevOps side of the business didn't want them to put the releases out because they were doing too many and they were overworking them. Because like 70% of all problems are due to a feature change from the development teams. And so the way that Google decided to deal with this issue is they said, well, what if we took developers that would normally be on a development team and we had them do DevOps stuff? And that's essentially how SRE came to be. And so SRE is kind of like DevOps, but done more in a software way and done with kind of a different strategic thinking, where you're really are engineering the availability of the service. You think that, you just want the service to always be up, right? But that's actually not the way that we think of it in SRE. We actually think of it as like, if you have like one or two major outages a year, and you look at the total number of requests, that's going to be like maybe 0.01% of all requests that year failed, right? So that's a 99.99% availability rating, right? And so that's actually kind of what you're targeting. And so it's actually like, thousandths of a percent that you're looking at. And what we find is that like the difference between a thousandth and a millionth of an availability percentage up, right, is like huge. It's like the amount of effort to get there is like really, really big. And so what they do is we kind of target a certain availability. And we also target our time as well. So like half of our SRE time should be spent doing feature work, and half of it should be responding to production issues. And so if we're not spending half of our time doing production issues, then they're probably not moving fast enough. The developers aren't developing fast enough, and we should be doing things like, taking things out of their way and roadblocks and things out of their way to allow them to push out faster. Understanding that availability will be hurt, but we're above our availability target, right? In fact, there are some things. One of the things that they do at Google is they say, this is the availability percentage that we're supposed to have, right? And then you get to the end of the year and you haven't had any problems at all. So you know what they do? They make the service unavailable intentionally to still match their target. That way, anybody that's like dependent on that service still has to deal with, what happens if this thing becomes unavailable, right? Isn't that interesting? And so it's a strategic view of it. And that's what SRE is. So it kind of gets interesting because once you're in SRE, it's kind of like you have all of these skills and technologies that you've worked with that are like really valuable to companies right now. Because especially the smaller companies are still kind of working on their automation and their cloud infrastructure and all of that sort of stuff. And so they need those people. But then you can also do this strategic SRE thing. So, and like the thing is I didn't say, I want to go into SRE. It was kind of like my team lead said, I think we should go this way. What do you guys think about it? And I was like, I guess I don't really care. So now I'm an SRE, and it turned out to be a great decision. And I'm really good. When I left, he was kind of like, I didn't do as good of a job as I should have. And he was like apologizing to me. And I was like, nah, you benefited me more in the long run by making that one good decision. Just say that your name is one. There you go. That's terrible. Don't say things like that, Octavius. You're going to get us in trouble. We'll be okay because my wife is a flight attendant. She just requested to go back to full time. And so starting in November, I have health insurance through her. It'll be okay. Just nobody break a leg in the next 3 weeks and we'll be fine. And, you know, again, like these get people move fast. So like it's totally possible that I could be starting a new job on Monday. It's totally possible, right? Don't get down. Yeah. You know, I've been doing a good job. Like, I'm still being super productive. I'm getting a lot done. I'm not, you know, I haven't been prone to any of those problems. So feeling pretty good about my performance during the between jobs period. Let's just hope that it's short. that we get that resolved in the next week or two. All right, guys, I'm gonna get going with some resumes to do, and then hopefully just get to spend a greater time of the day doing some script writing. So see you tomorrow. CPI is gonna be big. Don't miss it. Oh, and I always gotta remember to mention all the things. We do have a new Discord. Excuse me. We got so tired of all the spam. The old Discord is always going to be there, but there is also a new paid Discord. There's a link in the video description. It's only $3 a month, so just enough to ward off the bots. But I am posting more content over there and trying to get some discussions going. That's going to be a smaller group. I expect it to only ever be like, you know, 1 or 2 dozen people over there, but we've already got a decent number of people over there, so it's doing pretty good. If you're interested in that, head over to the Discord link in the video description, and you know, all of the other links in the video description. All right, see you tomorrow. Stay excellent, team.